Hey, I want to tell you about Moto Brand. Moto Brand was founded during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic when the sport that we live for was taken from so many of us, whether it's cycling or moto. Waking up on a Saturday morning knowing that your local track was closed, there would be no Supercross, and for many of us that we couldn't even hit our favorite local riding spot or trail with our crew. We are forced to be reminded of how much the sport of moto and cycling truly means to us. Moto Brand represents a collection of individuals that not only ride, but live to ride. It's what we think of at all times of the day, and sometimes at a detriment to your relationship with your significant other. It's for those that look at their motorcycle or their bicycle as part of their identity. Maybe it's the way that you bond with your son or your daughter or your spouse. Perhaps it's your way to blow off stress of your day job, or even, hey, it is what it is, maybe even it's your marriage. This sport is more than just a sport. For many of us, it's a way of life. It's what keeps us ticking. It's what keeps us living. Moto Brand was created for a purpose, to be more than just a shirt that you can throw on in the morning, but these designs represent who you are and what you stand for. So I encourage you to head over to the motobrand.com, check out our collection. We have a pedal collection and we have a throttle collection, and there are more designs to come that stand for something. So head over to motobrand.com and we'll see you there. Hey, right now Racer X is offering a pretty exciting promotion free to sign up for the magazine. If you go to racerxonline.com/moto marketing, anybody that subscribes right now is automatically entered into a pool for an opportunity to win your very own Specialized Turbo Levo. Now, anybody that follows me knows I'm an e-bike enthusiast, along with our friends at the Pulp MX Show and Steve Mathis. We love e-bikes. We have an e-bike team at Impakt, and we're all about it. And you can win your very own Turbo Levo, which is specialized, top-of-the-line, pedal assist mountain bike. It's what I personally ride, and I can tell you, man, they are a blast. So go over to racerxonline.com/moto marketing for your opportunity to get your very own e-bike.
Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast, presented by Racer X, the podcast for moto industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and riders. If you want to grow your brand and business in today's digital-first world, you have to know how to turn a stranger into a fan, turn a like into a customer. You have to know how to turn attention into dollars. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you in the know on real marketing tactics that work in the moto world so that you grow your business and help grow the sport. Get ready to learn from the very same marketing experts trusted by Racer X, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, GNCC, and NBC Sports. They'll help you navigate the world of digital marketing for your moto brand. This is the Moto Marketing Podcast. Presented by Racer X.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. Really excited about today's guest, somebody that, look, if you've ever listened to any moto podcast, you've heard of him. We've got Jason Thomas from Fly joining us today to talk about a lot of different things, and I know we have a short amount of time that we bang these episodes out in, so we're going to try to get through as much as possible and try to give you a little bit of a different flavor of Jason than you normally get. So, Jason, I appreciate you joining us, and welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, excited to be here. It's busy season for Fly Racing right now. We're on the cusp of another line launch, and I think this will be my 8th after racing for the brand for a long time and kind of on the other side of the fence now. But excited to be here and talk moto for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It's everybody's obviously very familiar with your story from going from athlete to working professional. And I really, to start things off, just wanted to take a deeper dive into that because I've always been kind of intrigued by, your road for the Fly brand in your professional career. And then I assume that's what opened that door to have a career after moto working for the brand. But you really didn't just kind of stop there and kind of disappear into the shadows. You're I think in anybody's opinion in the moto space, you are the face of Fly. kind of, and I know you've told this story briefly, maybe to Wygan or on one of Steve's podcasts, but kind of take us through that story of going from exiting your career to how did you get this opportunity? And then once you got into the company, what were some of the things you did to really grow yourself professionally to get to where you are today within Fly and WPS?
So I guess it really started somewhere around 2010. And I was still in the midst of my racing career. I would have been 30 then. So, when you turn 30 in this sport, you're either done racing or it's certainly on your mind. When am I going to be done? What am I going to do after I am done? And it wasn't weighing on me yet, but off weekends, off season, you start thinking about it, and you need to find a job or find something to do with basically the rest of your life, because leading up to that point, this has been your whole life. Right. There really was nothing else but waking up and training and racing and riding. So I started talking with Terry Baisley, who is the VP of sales for Western Power Sports, and Fly Racing was his baby. It was his idea in the very beginning. So he was and it still is hands-on with the brand. But he mentioned that he would like for me to end up at Western Power Sports in some capacity when I was done racing. And that was, music to my ears. It was really more, how are we going to find that, the right answer to that question? And for me, I immediately wanted to go into being an outside rep, because that would allow me to stay in Florida. And, for our company, we have 115 outside reps that are just for metric. And we have a V-twin division as well, but just for the reps that I deal with on a daily basis, we have 115 of them floating around the country. And there are a few where I was living in Tampa. So that would have been an easy transition. I could stay in Florida. I would have been able to make my own schedule, which for a racer, I think is a very powerful tool, because that's all we've done our whole life is create our training schedule, our riding schedule, going to the races. We've never really had to do the 9 to 5 office thing. So I felt like that was going to be the best fit for me. And so I had a few meetings. I had an interview with the regional manager, who is actually a guy you might be familiar with, Jim Chester, who used to be a professional racer as well. And so that was the path I was going down. And that went into 2011 and 2012. And I was pretty much locked and loaded, ready to go down that road. And nothing was really happening. Like, it just wasn't coming together. And there were a lot of factors and a dynamic I really wasn't knowledgeable enough to understand yet. Knowing what I know now, I totally get it. But at the time, I just felt like they didn't necessarily want me to do it, or I wasn't cut out for it, or some other reason that wasn't really the case.
Sure.
But in the end, it was just the company wasn't ready. The territory wasn't ready. And speaking with them now, they were worried that the territory wasn't going to live up to my expectations and the amount of dealers they had for me. And then I would end up quitting, and then that would kind of be the end of the road. Yeah. And they were more in the line of thinking that if they just were patient and they found something that made more sense, then the chances of long-term success would be much higher. Mm-hmm. So that was tough for me to understand, because all I really heard was excuses, and that was just my own impatience and lack of understanding at the time. So that was like summer of 12. And then I really kind of went into, I don't want to say a panic mode, but I was stressing a little bit, because this solution that I had in my head for so long wasn't really there anymore. It didn't seem like that was going to be an option. So I kind of went into this secondary way of thinking where, okay, I'm going to work out deals to do freelance journalism like Steve Mathis is doing, and any business opportunities, I'm going to do that. And I cultivated this VIP experience program with the Rocky Mountain KTM team. And basically every possible idea that I had as a maybe, I went, full force after, because I thought those might be the only solutions I had, or those might be my primary job. And, the funniest part of all of it was I got a call around September, and I can remember this call like, one of those moments you'll never forget. And I was driving to a Starbucks, and it was the off season, and it was just an afternoon, and I'd been riding Supercross that morning for some off-season races I was going to do. But I was just enjoying an off-season afternoon and driving to Starbucks, and I get a call from Terry. And anytime Terry calls me, that's a good thing because he's a pretty busy guy, and he's,
Sure.
VP of a big company, doesn't just randomly call people. So I'm like, all right, well, and I'm looking at my phone as it's ringing. I'm like, here we go. I don't know where this is going, but this could be something. And sure enough, he's like, hey, I have this opportunity, and I've been telling you for 2 years that I was going to come up with an answer for this. And, I think today is that day. And I'm like, I'm all in. Just fill me in on what the situation is. And, he's explaining this opportunity that, he had been basically doing everything for Fly, internationally, domestically, going to the factories, running all the sales side. And he had slowly been transitioning out of that. We were launching our V-twin division, which is called Hard Drive for Western Power Sports. And he was tasked by our CEO to take that on. And he was going to be completely in charge of that V-twin division. Well, that focus was going to disallow him from any focus on fly racing anymore. And the real hole that he needed filled was someone that could travel internationally and go visit all of our distributors around the world, basically sell to them, make sure everything's going smoothly for them, visit their key accounts with them, and help to increase business, and really anything and everything to do with international sales. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I had been traveling the world, most of my career. I think I was on year 13 of racing internationally at that point. So the very first few details, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. Of course I want to do this. And then the last detail was really the one that kind of caught me. Is like, well, you're going to have to move to Boise and be in the office for this position. And to be honest, I'd never considered moving out of Florida before. So that was, it really just caught me by surprise more than anything else. I was so excited, and I was trying to compose myself on the phone. And then he hits me with this final detail that really kind of changed the picture of it. And it wasn't for good or for bad. It just really made me take a deep breath and had to rethink the whole process again. And I remember I said, listen, Terry, I number one, I really appreciate this opportunity above all else. And for you to be willing to take a chance on me, who is an uneducated motorcycle racer that you're going to have to teach everything to, I can't tell you how much that means. Past that, I need 24 hours. I need to talk to my parents. I need to figure out if I can rent my house. I need to talk, this is all.
I mean, you're packing your life up and moving across the country.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm changing everything, right?
Yeah.
My whole life is going to move across the country. And, so he was totally fine with that. He's like, yeah, we need to make a move soon. But yeah, 24 hours is more than reasonable. I said, great. So I remember calling a few people. I called, my trusted friends, Chad Reed and Tim Ferry, and all the people that I trusted their opinion on. And some had already gone through, Tim Ferry had already gone through it, and some were about to go through it, like Chad Reed, about what's next after racing. And everyone, including my parents, were like, are you stupid? Like, why did you not say yes on the spot? Like, this is an opportunity that you may never get again. So I think it took me about 2 hours to call Terry back and say, hey, forget the 24 hours. I'm in. I don't even know what the, compensation is. I don't know anything other than it's a yes. And we'll sort out everything later. Just don't offer it to anybody else. And so that was kind of the start of it. And, the most ironic part of it was all of those other ideas and other projects, like freelancing for Racer X. And there are some other people that I write for. The podcast stuff with Steve Mathis. We launched Pulp MX Fantasy a couple years ago, this VIP experience. All of those kind of came to fruition as well. So I was most worried about getting this one position with WPS, which happened. And, thankfully I've been there ever since, but all of these other things ended up happening as well. And it was kind of like the perfect storm of all of these. I was hoping for one yes amongst all of these, and I kind of got yes across the board, and I was just very blessed in that scenario.
I think one of the reasons that I've been so intrigued by you and your story and just impressed with what you do is, even though you're not technically by the book an entrepreneur, you're very much entrepreneurial blooded. And I think you had that from the time that you raced moto and maybe didn't even realize it, because I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, you could have very easily not stayed in the sport because the opportunity didn't just walk through the door. Like you started the, the VIP experience and everything like that. But I didn't realize that you started that on your own. I thought that was something done as a request via WPS or Fly. So you took the initiative on so many things and just kind of took a leap of faith and jumped on an opportunity when it arose, and then still continue to do all these other things like the podcast and fantasy and the journalism side of things, and then still grew within the company. I mean, I don't know the inner workings of Fly hardly at all, but I think I've heard enough of your content that you at least have the ear of the decision makers on several things. If you're not considered one of them, that doesn't just happen because you raced, right? You earn that position. So for maybe a young professional, whether they're racing or they're just somebody in college, I want them to understand that work ethic, that you didn't just let off the gas when you got that opportunity. I mean, what was it that kept you pushing and pushing and pushing to not just be somebody at Fly, but be one of the guys that's one of the most respected individuals in that company?
Well, I'll tell you, it was very challenging at first because, you come from racing, and it's not like I was winning races or anything, but in that world, being a professional Supercross racer, you have a lot of people that
Sure.
are nice to you all the time, and they do things for you. And I don't want to say life comes easy, but there are worse things than racing Supercross for a living. Let's say that. And to go from that to walking into a business and not knowing really how this business works, it's crazy to me looking back to know how long I was a part of the brand, and it was 10 years at that point.
Right.
And also to realize how little I knew about that business and about that brand after being a part of them for so long. It really shocks me now to know how ignorant I was to all the inner workings that went on. But I can remember the first week was really, really difficult and humbling, because every meeting you go into, you're the dumbest person in the room. And maybe not, it's true though,
yeah.
Maybe not on some subjects, if they spin the conversation a certain way, you have an opinion that's valuable. But in 95% of the conversations, you
Sure.
really have nothing to offer. And they're using, especially in the role that I was in, which was international sales, you're talking in terms of customs and duties and freight forwarding and working with the factory and FOB pricing. And there's all these things that they're like breathing now, but I had no idea what they even meant. I didn't even know what they were referencing. So not only was I trying to learn, I was trying to learn when they were using a different language. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to learn business when I couldn't even, I didn't really even have the vocabulary to digest it. So it was a really challenging time. And I would be lying if there weren't days where I was sitting on my couch here in Boise after work and just really not depressed, but very just frustrated that I didn't know this stuff, and that I was very discouraged about how this was going to go. And I kind of had to just have a little pep talk with myself and say, listen, you are going to go in and you're going to make it your mission every single day to learn, and you're going to pick this stuff up faster than they expect you to. And eventually it's going to make sense. This
Right.
isn't rocket science.
Right.
You just have to learn every single day and not waste time, so they don't give up on you. And they knew, they told me the first day, hey, there's going to be a serious learning curve here. And I kind of brushed it off because, oh yeah, I'm a racer and we know everything. Well, I didn't know anything.
Sure.
And I didn't even, that you see, you hear that saying, I didn't know what I didn't even know yet.
Mm-hmm.
That was never more true than me coming to work for Western Power Sports. And, when you were speaking about like the VIP program and all these things, I really attribute that to having just the mentality of a racer, which, pretty much everybody listening to this podcast can relate to. In racing, if you don't work for it and you don't train and practice and ride, you're not going to accomplish anything, right? There is nothing given in that sport. And racing is all about trying to continue to improve and try to attain goals and get better. I really just took that mental mindset, for lack of a better term, and I hate it's so cliche, but I tried to apply it to everything else that I was going to do. and don't waste days, and try to get a little bit better or learn something that day that you didn't know the day before.
Sure.
And if you can continue to do that, there are so many people in this world that are very complacent and they're just going through the motions. And if you don't allow yourself to get there, you can really gain ground and improve. And when people that are in influential positions see someone that really wants to do a good job and learn and be very valuable to a company, especially at Western Power Sports anyway, they took notice and not necessarily put me in a position to make decisions, but they allowed me to keep growing.
Right.
And
right.
I think that's the thing I was most thankful for, is that opportunity. And I never wanted to take that opportunity for granted or to prove Terry or anyone else wrong.
Yeah.
I think that was my biggest fear, was for them to look back one day and say, we made a mistake here. And
Sure.
I don't think I could have accepted that.
Yeah. I've had business conversations with just other people. And one of the things that I've mentioned multiple times is that I really feel like a former athlete, even if it's just somebody that played football in high school, a former athlete that understands work ethic and putting in the work to get to where you want to be can be some of the best sales reps and managers and just employees in general, because they understand that you have to put in the work in order to get the result. On the flip side, and I think it's true in moto as well, there are some athletes that are so used to being, God's gift to the earth and having everything given to them, that they can also make some of the worst employees. So if you find that hardworking, and I think in moto, those are the privateers that continuously go racing. I think Tyler Bowers could have a successful career in some type of business when he's done, because what he's done to get his program together year in and year out to show up to the races is not easy, and he's doing the majority of it behind the scenes. And I think that's where a lot of your success came from, was you never had anything given to you when you raced, and you had a very long, successful career, all things considered. And I think that's one of the reasons it transitioned so well over to business. Hey, we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to Jason about the 2021 lineup of fly gear that's going to be coming out before you know it, and I'm excited to hear about it, and we'll dive into a few other things. So we'll be right back. Hey, big shout out to our friends at FMF. Little D and the guys are always doing some pretty exciting things, not just with the performance products, but man, they've got the coolest apparel in the game, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to get that at a little bit of a discount. If you go to FMF and pick up any gear you'd like, hats, shirts, whatever it is, upon checkout, if you enter the code MMP30, MMP30, you can get 30% off. So MMP30 at checkout and get 30% off your order on FMF Apparel. Hey, I want to tell you about our friends over at Evil Coffee. And when I say friends, I genuinely mean it. We use their product here. We enjoy their product here. We are coffee addicts here at the Moto Marketing Podcast Studio and the Impakt Results offices. We've got baristas that work for us. We've got espresso machines, multiple coffee machines. We dig our coffee, and we dig Evil Coffee. It's specialty coffee grown in Costa Rica and small batch roasted right in Columbus, Ohio, which is pretty much our backyard. So what is specialty coffee? It's coffee beans that have been scored 80 points or above on the 100-point coffee review scale, where aroma, acidity, body, and flavor are all taken into account. Evil exclusively roasts specialty Costa Rican coffee due to its lower acidity and robust flavor profiles. Not gonna lie, it's one of the only coffees that I've been able to drink black. I normally put some almond milk in it, but man, I can actually drink this stuff just straight out of the pot, right? Or even better, out of the espresso machine. So something else that they're doing, if you're tired of running out of coffee, or even worse, going to the store to get your coffee, Evil Coffee Club is the solution to ensure you always are stocked up on the freshest, best tasting coffee available. Here's how it works. Once you hit subscribe, you'll be prompted to pick your roast and then your preferred bean style. You can feel free to mix and match, and what they'll do is they'll take care of the rest and deliver it straight to your doorstep every single month. So check out evilcoffeecompany.com and set yourself up, man. I mean, it's really good, and here's the even cooler thing. They're moto guys, right? These guys are into moto, and I like to support people that are into moto, even when they have a product that isn't necessarily moto oriented. So go over to evilcoffeecompany.com, tell them that Luke from the Moto Marketing Podcast sent you, and enjoy yourself a fresh cup of the Evil Coffee Company Go Juice. All right, welcome back to the Moto Marketing Podcast. Again, we have Jason Thomas on the show with us today, and I want to talk a little bit about the 2021 lineup of gear. Something that I'm excited. I wear Fly myself when I do go out and ride the moto, but mainly when I'm racing BMX or with the EMTB team that Impakt put together. And we were talking before the show. Big shout out to Ray Hudson. He's been a massive help. So I am also excited to see what's coming for 2021. Any good news right now is great news with everything going on. So Jason, what can we expect? Do you guys have anything exciting this year that people should know about?
Well, and it's been a crazy time, right? In April, it seemed like the world was coming to an end. And I know to a man at our company, we were very scared about where the direction of this industry was going. And then, the second half of April, and then ever since, all of May, all of June, and then July, it's like someone, turned the power sports spigot on and hasn't turned it off. So it's been really great. And I've reached out to friends at other companies and companies that we distribute, and everybody across different platforms of this industry, from watercraft to, UTV to motocross, and everybody's doing really well. And that was a very unexpected silver lining of this COVID-19 pandemic. And it really couldn't have come at a better time for us, because we have a lot of new items for 2021 that we were very excited about. And we were really disappointed in April, thinking that it was going to be a very difficult launch and people wouldn't really even be in the mood to absorb it. And they wouldn't have money to spend and go buy it, or even care, because they wouldn't even be able to go outside. That's what we were really worried about. And it's been anything but that. So we've really been trying to just get our message out, talk about a lot of the new things we have coming. As you know, we had our Formula helmet debut a year and a half ago, and we've really tried to put that at the forefront of our marketing, from television commercials to print advertising to social media, and sharing that brain protection message. And, that was a 5-year project. And I know for a fact we had over $1 million of R&D into that singular project. And for us to not do our very best job to share that and get it onto people's heads would have been a huge disservice to the work that was done. So we're trying to continue on that message. And with that, we have another offering, and this helmet will be called the Formula CC. And that CC stands for carbon composite. So the great part of this Formula CC is you're getting all of the same technology and protection. So you're getting the Rheon energy cells that are inside of, which are those blue, weird looking energy cells that you see us marketing all over the place. That goes into the Formula CC as well. You get the Conehead Eps, which is another very distinct component of that helmet. And it's basically what Conehead Eps, for those who don't know, it's 2 different layers of EPS, and they have a cone construction to where it's almost like a crumple zone in a car. So one is softer and one is more dense. And as that impact is made, they crumple together and absorb that energy. So it's a secondary layer of protection on top of the Rheon. And then we combine it with our 12K carbon shell in the full formula to make the AIS, which is Advanced Impact Protection System. So that helmet going into a CC, carbon composite helmet, we are now able to bring that protection and that technology down to a retail that's $449.95. So that was a huge step forward for us.
Yeah.
But just talking to customers and parents, it's the stretch sometimes to get up into that $649.95 range.
Sure.
Just some people, as much as they believed in the product, just couldn't get there. They just couldn't stretch the dollar enough to get there. So that will open up hopefully a new customer base. And then when you talk about the youth option, now you're down to $399.95. So
for the same technology as the full-on formula, same safety technology inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's big.
So if a full carbon shell is not the most important thing, right? And when you're talking about premium, you almost have to have full carbon. But for a lot of people, they're more worried about the protection. They just want to stay safe, and they want to stay on the forefront of what's available out there to keep themselves safe. that's going to be a great option to introduce a whole lot of new customers that we just weren't reaching before. So that was the one of the biggest items. Probably the second thing I'm most excited about is we have a brand new white pant, and this line used to be called White Hydrogen. We've just shortened the name a bit down to Light now. But when you get to see it in person, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We changed the material, so a much lighter material. And we also went to what we call a zipperless entry. And that sounds crazy, but it's just like it sounds. There is no more zipper on the pant. Now on our white and our Boa, we use Boa Closure systems. So just like you'd see on a snowboard boot or a golf shoe, that Boa system is everything as far as closure and fit on a pant. And we've been using it for the past 5 years. Now we took that Boa system, we moved it to the front, and that allowed us to completely remove the zipper from the pant. So when you pull your pants on, it's like pulling on a pair of like basketball shorts or gym shorts. And it is a little bit, it's something to get used to. The first time you're like, oh man, it's a little funky. But once you put them on and you understand the freedom of movement, that you don't have these binding zippers and all these things that are very rigid on the pant anymore, there is simply nothing like it on the market. And it's funny, I'll make it brief, but I was the one that was pushing back the hardest on this pant because I was scared we didn't test it enough. I was scared we didn't prove the concept enough. And I knew how popular that our white pant was in the past. It's what all of our racers want to wear. You see it in Supercross all the time, and it's what I wore every time I rode. So I was so worried about screwing it up. I didn't want to take a huge step backwards on our most popular line of gear. And so I was kind of getting into it with the lead designer on this project, and respectfully, but we were just in a disagreement on whether we should go forward or not at that point. And he said, listen, go ride in it. Just do that for me. Go ride. We had a test pant. Go ride in it. And if you're not 100% sold when you come back in, then we'll go back to the drawing board and we'll look at pushing this to at least maybe spring of 2021, actual calendar year 21. I said, okay, fair enough. I can live with that. That's compromise. So I went out. We have a track at our office, which is an awesome, thing to have for testing and literally proving concept like this. So I went out there and I made it about 5 minutes before I literally rode my bike to the building, leaned it up against the door, and went in the design room and was running around the building high-fiving people. That's awesome. Because, cool. The pant was so much better than anything I'd ever worn in my life. And that's unbiased. You're always get accused of being a salesman and a champion of the brand and all that stuff. I get it.
Yeah.
But for those
you
people
believe
that
in the brand.
are out
I think
there,
that's a big part of it.
We have products that are very comparable to a lot of other brands in a lot of situations. This pant was truly something different. That's what I was most excited about. I knew that there was nothing else out there like this and nothing performed like this. And that's what gets me excited. For us to be on par with other people, okay, so what? Yeah. There's a lot of people that can claim that. But when you truly innovate and you truly bring something to market that no one else is doing, knowing from where our brand came from, going back to 2003 and 2004, and we were the little guy looking up at, these titans of the motocross world. When you bring something out like that, whether it's the Formula helmet or this new white pant, and you have something that everybody else is going to be looking at you going, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Sure.
That puts a smile on my face.
So quick question, if you're able to answer this. So something like that is a drastic change, a simple change, but makes such a big difference. Is there anything that you guys do or have done that prevents any of the competitors from next year being like, man, that was successful, let's do that on ours? Or is it something to where it's the Boa technology, anybody can do it? Is there anything that protects you, or is it, hey, we just, we got a 1-year jump on pretty much anybody else that's going to consider doing this in 2022?
Well, there's a couple things. So obviously, Boa has to agree to work with said brand. And as of right now, we are the only brand in Moto that they have partnered with for pants. Oh, wow. And that's been great for us. Yeah. And I think there's something to it where the other brands are like, hey, that's kind of Fly Racing's thing. We don't want to look like copycats. But at the same time, they probably have worn the pant and realized how good it is. So I'm sure that puts them in a bind as far as which direction to go. But secondarily to that, the pant material is all new for 2021. So it's a proprietary blend that we worked on with the factory to create. So between the zipperless entry and this new material, the pant is now, it's 0.9 of a pound. The entire pant is under a pound. So you think about how light.
That's insane.
Less than a pound for your whole, the whole pair of pants. That really makes a difference when you're riding, and you can truly feel the difference. And keep in mind, the light pant already was like 1.35.
Yeah.
So we took like 30% more out of the lightest pant we had to offer. So it truly is something that until you wear it, until you try it on, it's hard to explain. Even as hard as I'm trying to explain it, it's still very difficult to explain the difference.
Something that I think is unique that Fly does that I've enjoyed is you guys have an unfair advantage that you've, one, earned through relationships, and two, obviously you pay to play in this field. But in the moto industry, podcasts are king. It is the most popular medium that people are consuming content. I mean, and primarily it's pulp, and now you have Swap Moto Live. You have all the things that Racer X does. Audio is king in this space. And I don't know, it was a couple of years ago. It's become like a tradition to where I'm usually on vacation when these shows come out, and you're talking about in depth with whether it's Kiefer or with Steve. You're going in depth on these products, and you guys do it in a way that it doesn't feel like it's an hour-long sales pitch. Like, I'm intrigued by it because I like gear. When your launch strategy around this stuff is all encompassing, it's a lot of audio, but you guys are obviously doing the print with Racer X and et cetera. And then, you do, it seems like you're getting reviews with people through video form. How much thought goes into the launch from a media side? And I know that's kind of the tour that you just got back from, and I assume that's those episodes are coming with Steve and Kiefer, since you were just in Vegas last week. How much thought goes into that as part of the launch process after you've developed this product, it's ready to go, now it's time to spread the word?
Yeah, quite a bit. And everybody has kind of their own platform, right? So as you mentioned, Kiefer, his is very audio based, and he does a very good job of a product testing viewpoint. And he's kind of cultivated this audience where they go to him to learn about key changes in a product. And that's really where, when I haven't even done the podcast with him yet, but when I do, I will steer it very much towards that, the technical aspects of the product, because I feel like that's who his listener has become. And then, with Steve, he's turned it into a bit more a video with YouTube this year, but obviously his podcasts are still massive. So you try to combine the two and really get the most out of it. And you show the product on the video, but as well as have some fun. And his shows are so much known for almost the hijinks that go on and
right.
People making jokes and having fun. So you want to incorporate that as well. And then you also, I met with the High Tour guys. So Dirt Bike Magazine and Motocross Action, and they are very print oriented. And yes, they have websites, and yes, they have social media, but their customer and their bread and butter is print. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure you supply them with the assets and you cover it in depth enough so then they can go back in the next month and write about all these things and prepare content and take photos and then get those photos edited and cropped and in the magazine. So for me, my biggest goal was, okay, think about who you're dealing with media-wise, and how do they reach their listener or their viewer or their reader? What is their platform? What's their angle? And then how do I sculpt my message to best be absorbed off of that platform? And so, I spent, weeks, and there were meetings, and when it came down to it, I had to go execute it myself. But there's definitely a lot of talk about how do we optimize it. And when it really comes down to it, the end all be all goal, no matter what, is that you never want any customer, if they're interested in what you have to offer, that they can't find information. Mm-hmm. So whether they're in a magazine or on a website or this Moto marketing podcast or Steve Mathis' YouTube videos or whatever the case is, make sure that they have information readily available in the way that they want to absorb it. Not how I think is best, but how they are used to absorbing information. And if we cover all those bases and you can minimize the amount of people that don't get that message, then I think we've done a good job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm excited to see everything, and I'm always I always enjoy your guys' product launches. And I'm intrigued to see, kind of what you have in store this year. Last thing I want to talk about, I know we're running a little bit longer than we do on normal shows, but there's just so much. There's so many layers of the onion to peel back with you, Jason, that we're not even touching on everything I want to. I think the best way to cover this topic is if I can find a way to get, you and Paul and Steve to do a three-way episode to really dive into this. But I think you're a great precursor to maybe making that happen. I want to talk about the fantasy side of things. Now, I don't play fantasy, but strangely enough, I listen to every fantasy episode because I'm just intrigued by your guys' thoughts and opinions on last week and what's going to happen this week. And I don't know why I don't play it. I've never been a fantasy football guy, so I think I've kind of never gotten into the moto side. But if the fantasy side of what you guys have created, there's been people that have attempted to do it, and there are other versions of it out there, but it's not as in-depth and as involved as what you guys have. What you guys are building and have built thus far reminds me a lot of, obviously, the stick and ball sports fantasy, which that is a business in and of itself. It grows and brings new fans into that sport. And I feel like I've seen some of that in Moto, whether it's people calling into the Pulp Show, and it's John who's a super fan, and he and his girlfriend play Pulp MX Fantasy, and that gets her watching, little things like that. Do you agree that if this is done correctly, and it is right now, but do you think this could play a role in growing the sport of moto? Was that the thought when you guys all got together and said, hey, let's build this thing? I think it's bigger than a lot of people realize. Like, it's not just Steve and Mark's. Like, it's you and Paul and Steve and everybody else that's involved. Like, is it its own business in and of itself?
It is. And, it really was born from all of us playing fantasy football for years. Yeah. And that's, and there were other fantasy motocross websites. We weren't the first to ever do it, but we also saw that there was an opportunity to do it a little better, and I think promote it a little bit more. And Steve had the perfect platform based off of his podcast, and that we could spread the message and get people excited about it. And yeah, football for decades has proven out that people, if they learn how to play, it really does create a new level of interest and excitement. And I'm that person. Sunday mornings, NFL Sunday, I'm up at 5 or 6 in the morning, and I'm looking at stats and who's hurt and who's not, and what's the weather and all that stuff, right? But it's so much fun, and it adds this second level to every game, and that's really transferred into motocross. And how that's kind of real life scenario is, normally if you watch a race, okay, yeah, you're excited about Tomac and Cooper Webb and Roxon and these guys, just like I am too. But everybody at home, for your casual fan, those are the key interest points. Well, what fantasy motocross has really done is it has introduced that casual fan to all of the privateers, because those are the guys that can gain you a ton of points. And they have what we call handicaps built in that allow them to gain many more points than a rider like Eli Tomac does. So it behooves you to go do your research, find out who's riding well, who's hurt, who may ride this type of soil better than the other type of soil. Did they have a good week of practice? Like, all the research that you can learn on social media and all these awesome, ways we have to gather content now. But it's opened up the door for all those guys that you would never really even know, or I don't want to say you wouldn't care about, but the interest level would be much lower. Yeah, it builds the story. Those guys are right on the tip of these fans' tongues now, because they're like, oh yeah, I picked him last week. Kevin Moran's or Lorenzo Accurcio, or all these guys that are not household names, but for fantasy players, they absolutely are, because that's how you win or lose, is based on those guys' success. And I'll tell you, you've never lived until you are on the edge of your seat for a battle between 14th and 15th for your fantasy team. But that didn't exist before. It was all like, guys were getting laughed, and I've been that guy many times in my racing career. No one was paying attention. No one really cared. But now those fantasy points, especially if you're on the cusp of getting double points or not, it's everything. And I've screamed at my TV and screamed at the racetrack over 15th place more than a few times in my life. Yeah, I think it's been really cool to see the awareness that it brings to privateers. And I know Steve does the Privateer Island podcast, and you guys as a collective have done a lot for the privateers. But
that has been one of the that now that I'm kind of saying it and talking it through, that's been one of the things that I think has brought me back to the fantasy podcast as somebody that doesn't play it but listens to it, is to hear what's going on with the 12th place on down, because you guys build these storylines around that. So whether that's kind of the golden ticket of this, when it's all said and done and we're all not here anymore, what fantasy did for the sport, I think it honestly, whether it was a unintentional byproduct or not, it's given a lot of privateers recognition that they never would have gotten if it weren't for what you guys have done. I think that's really cool. It's been cool to watch.
Yeah, I think for those who are like yourself, who have never played, there is a learning curve at the beginning, trying to sort out how the system works and, picking the guys that are eligible for double points and our guys that aren't. It's, take a couple hours, you learn the system pretty easily. But the level of interest for the race is so much higher because it's not only just about the guys at the front, because it happens all the time where the race at the front is pretty boring. Tomac will be 10 seconds out front. And I've never been more entertained in my life because of the battles going on throughout the pack, which all my fantasy guys are involved in. So it really takes what could be a boring race and makes it really, really entertaining. And I think that's been, above all else, I think that's been the biggest benefit of fantasy motocross, is the level of entertainment for the entire sport has been elevated by it.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's been awesome to watch and see the growth year after year. Well, Jason, man, I appreciate you being on. I want to obviously be respectful of your time, and the listeners have an expectation that this isn't a Pulp MX long podcast. But there was so much to cover with you, and we didn't even go through all of it. So maybe one day we'll get you back on to talk about it. And man, it's been cool to watch your career progress and just what you've done at Fly and how you've kind of spread the word of that brand, and you believe in the brand. It's been cool to watch. So I appreciate everything you're doing there. And then obviously, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about your podcast, I enjoy listening to that every week. So for those that haven't had a chance to listen to Industry Seating, where's the best place that they could find that?
Yeah, so you can find it any place you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all the main places. But it was just, this is the first year of it, and just natural growth, like what we were talking about at the beginning. It was just the next step in something that I had kind of on my plate, and this was a good year to do it. And it's nothing, we're not changing the world or anything, but we're bench racing and talking about the current events, state of affairs in our sport that we all love, and just more information. And so many of these shows I do with Steve and Weege and these guys, Steve kind of leads it and steers the direction of it. Well, this one is mine, and I can talk about the things I want to talk about and steer the direction myself. And I try to take a little bit of a different viewpoint than Steve has. And, MXGP, for instance, Steve doesn't really talk about that. He's not so interested in MXGP. I am. If I want to talk about MotoGP, I'm going to talk about MotoGP. So it gives me that space to kind of control the narrative a little bit and just the things I'm interested in. And feedback's been great. It's been really fun, most importantly. And if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see where it goes.
Awesome. Yeah, if you haven't listened to it, definitely do so. I enjoy listening to the show, and I think if you're a Moto fan, you'll dig it. Jason, I appreciate it, man. It's been great having you on, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Hopefully at the Nationals, once we figure out what's going to happen with those, and hopefully by the time this comes out, everybody should know we're recording this a bit earlier than when it's going to air. So, man, best of luck this year, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Cool. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impakt Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpakt.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.